There is a kind of fire no one talks about. Not in churches, not in families, and certainly not in spiritual circles. It burns quietly, but it's relentless. You feel it in the middle of the night, in the silence after prayer, in the deepest corners of your being. It's not hunger, it's not loneliness, it's not confusion. It's sexual desire, raw, holy, terrifying in its power. And if you're honest, you've felt ashamed of it. You've fought it. You've begged for it to disappear. But it doesn't. It returns, stronger, louder, uninvited, unexplained. But what if I told you this desire isn't a curse? What if this fire, the one that makes you question your worth, your holiness, your control, is not here to destroy you, but to reveal you? Because if you are carrying a sexual desire that feels too intense for this world, if your body feels like a battlefield between heaven and flesh, then I need you to listen carefully. This is not weakness. This is the final test of the chosen. The world has twisted the meaning of desire. Religion often buries it under shame. Culture turns it into entertainment. But for those who are truly chosen, not in name, but in soul, sexual desire is not just biology. It's spiritual warfare. It's a sacred flame placed in you by design, not to consume you, but to forge you. Only those with a divine mission are given this level of intensity, because only they have the strength to refine it into power. Your desire is not your enemy. It's your invitation. It's the doorway to mastery. You were not chosen because you are perfect. You were chosen because you are willing to wrestle with fire and not run, to hold passion in your hands and not be owned by it, to feel the storm, and still choose the path of light. But here is the deception. The test is subtle. It won't always look like temptation. It might come wrapped in loneliness, in boredom, in a moment of tiredness. It might appear on a glowing screen, or in the arms of someone who only sees your surface. It will try to convince you that giving in will make the ache go away. But you already know the ache returns deeper each time, because it was never about the body. It was always about the spirit. This message is not about repression, it's about transmutation, about rising into your power, not by silencing your desire, but by understanding it, honoring it, and ultimately mastering it. Because if you are one of the chosen ones, your sexual desire is not random. It is a gate, a final trial before your full awakening. And the moment you begin to see it this way, everything changes. So, before we go deeper, I want to ask you to do something simple but powerful. Type 99 in the comments. Why 99? Because it represents the end of old cycles, the breaking of shame, the death of confusion, and the beginning of spiritual clarity. When you type it, you're not just engaging, you're aligning. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Not for algorithms, but for your own soul. This is a space where we don't avoid the truth. We walk straight into it, with reverence and power. Here, you will be reminded that your greatest battle is also your greatest proof. You were born for more. So stay with me until the end of this message, because what we're about to unlock together may be the very key you've been searching for. You are not broken. You are not dirty. You are not weak. You are chosen. And this fire inside of you is not here to burn you down. It's here to awaken the divine within you. From the very beginning, something about you refused to fit into the ordinary mold. While others walked through life unaware, you felt everything. The weight of a word, the pulse of a glance, the electricity in silence. And within that, heightened awareness. There has always been something else. A burning current moving beneath the surface. A desire not easily explained, not easily silenced. A desire that returns even after prayer, even after guilt, even after discipline. This desire isn't chaos. It isn't rebellion. It isn't something to be cured. It is coded fire, not placed in you by accident, but by divine design. You were never meant to numb it. You were meant to decode it. The world has tried to tame you by convincing you that this desire is unholy, that the feelings in your body are dirty, that the intensity in your soul is dangerous. But here's the truth you've always suspected. Even if you didn't have the words, your desire is not a flaw. It is a frequency. And not everyone can hear it. Not everyone can carry it. For the chosen, desire is not random. It is sacred software. A key embedded within the body that unlocks something eternal. That longing you feel, that ache that seems to rise out of nowhere, is not just about touch. It's not just about connection. It's about purpose. Buried inside that desire is your creative force, your spiritual antenna, your divine compass. You were never meant to suppress this energy, but to transmute it. To recognize that the same force that tempts can also build, channel, and ignite. Sexual desire is the wildest current of spiritual energy we experience in the body, and that's why it's the final test. Not because you are meant to avoid it, but because you are called to master it without destroying it. And look closely. Why does the world try so hard to distract you? Why are the traps set so early? Why are the illusions so vivid, the temptations so constant? Because the enemy doesn't waste ammunition on the powerless. If it's targeting you, it's because your desire is sacred. Your energy threatens the systems that feed on numbness and conformity. You were never meant to be neutral. You were born to carry voltage. That's why this path isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. When you begin to understand your desire as something divine, something encoded with instruction, everything shifts. The shame begins to melt. The war inside starts to quiet. And the fire becomes focused. You no longer run from it. You walk with it. Because now you know. This desire is not your punishment. It is your proof. It's the signal that your mission is real. The evidence that your body and spirit were wired for something higher. And though it may have once felt like a curse, it is in truth your calling in disguise. If you slow down and begin to trace the thread of your story, a startling realization starts to emerge. One that's almost too heavy to fully grasp at first. The battle for your purity didn't begin when you became conscious of desire. It didn't wait for your adolescence to bloom. It didn't start when you first began to feel the pull of love or the tension of touch. No. It began long before that. Before you had language. Before you had memory. Before you could even name what was happening inside of you. And that's not an accident. Because purity, in its true form, is not the absence of experience. It is not about being untouched by life. Purity is presence. It is clarity. It is the undiluted awareness of who you truly are, of the divine spark within you, untainted by manipulation or shame. And that kind of clarity is dangerous to anything that profits off confusion. It threatens every system built on seduction, illusion, and control. You see, the chosen ones don't walk through life like everyone else. They carry a frequency, not louder, but deeper, not brighter, but clearer. It's a vibration that shakes lies loose just by existing. And so, the resistance comes early. The distortion begins before you even know what you're defending. Do you remember? The way music played in the background, planting stories about love that were really just addiction in disguise. The way films romanticized lust and blurred the sacred lines between desire and domination. The way conversations, even among the people you trusted, made you question your worth, your body, your instincts. For some, the attacks were louder, moments that left you wounded too young, eyes that saw you in ways they should not have, hands that crossed boundaries they had no right to touch, words that carved lies into your identity. These weren't random. They weren't isolated events. They were attempts to confuse the blueprint inside you, because if the enemy can get to your purity before you even know what it is, if it can convince you that your desire is dangerous, that your body is shameful, that your sensitivity is a liability, then the awakening is delayed, not destroyed, but delayed. And in that delay, so many souls lose their way. But look at you. Despite it all, despite the traps, the confusion, the wounds, something inside you held on. Something inside you refused to forget. And that something is sacred. You may have grown up wondering why you felt everything so deeply, why shallow things felt empty to you, why silence spoke louder than words, and pain that others ignored pierced you like thunder. That depth wasn't brokenness. It was design. But because it made you different, it made you vulnerable. And the quickest way to sabotage a soul like yours is to attack its purity, because purity, when distorted, turns to shame. And shame, when left to fester, becomes a cage you forget you're in. But you're not in that cage anymore. Not fully. Not if you're here, reading this. Because something inside of you is waking up. And here's the truth you were never told. The depth of your early battle is the measure of your spiritual weight. The intensity of the confusion you faced is the reflection of the clarity you're destined to carry. You were not targeted because you were weak. You were targeted because you were powerful. And the fire placed inside of you, yes, even the fire that came in the form of desire, was seen long before you saw it yourself. So don't let the past become your disqualification. Let it become your confirmation. The very thing that almost broke you is the thing that will become your badge of honor. Your scars are not signs of failure. They are the signature of survival, proof that even when the battle began before you could name it, you didn't fold. You endured. And that endurance means this: you still carry what the darkness tried to bury. You still house the flame. The second revelation is this: purity is not something you lost. It is something that was hidden beneath the noise. And now you're reclaiming it. Not by erasing your past, but by redeeming its meaning. And as you begin to walk in this clarity, the shame will lose its voice, and the fire that once confused you will begin to illuminate the path ahead. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when the real war begins. Not the one that shouts, not the one that burns in obvious pain or chaos, but the one that whispers, the one that distracts. And for the chosen, this is perhaps the most dangerous battlefield of all, the war of subtlety. Because when the enemy realizes it cannot destroy you head-on, it shifts its strategy. It chooses to delay you, to scatter you, to lure your energy away from purpose, drop by drop, second by second, until you're no longer even aware of the battle you're losing. And it never announces itself. It shows up as harmless noise, as everyday patterns, as background habits that slowly eat away at your clarity. It shows up in your phone screen when you should be praying, in music that sings of love but echoes lust, in images that awaken hunger but offer no nourishment. It doesn't shout, "This is your downfall." It simply whispers, "This is nothing." And that whisper, repeated enough times, becomes a spell. But here's the truth the system never wanted you to see. Confusion is not a side effect. It is the weapon. Distraction is not accidental. It is the method. Because if your mind can be kept busy chasing empty highs, momentary hits of stimulation, flashes of emotion, endless loops of scrolling, then your soul never gets the space it needs to remember who you are. Think about it. Reflect for a moment on the seasons of your life where you felt closest to breakthrough. How often, in those very moments, your desire became harder to control. When you were close to clarity, temptation intensified. When your spirit quieted down, the noise outside turned up. When your heart prepared to ascend, the world pulled at your flesh. That is not coincidence, it is design. Because your breakthrough threatens the systems that profit off your silence. Distraction doesn't come to kill you overnight. It comes to leak your power so slowly that you forget you had any. It comes to erode your authority in whispers. It drains your divine energy with things that seem harmless. Entertainment, scrolling, compulsions, just one more moments. Until you're too depleted to dream, too foggy to discern, too numb to feel the sacred heat of your own calling. But something changes when you wake up. When you begin to see the pattern for what it truly is, not guilt, not shame, but strategy. You stop blaming yourself and start reclaiming your energy. Because every moment you choose awareness over autopilot, you take your power back. Every moment you notice the noise and return to silence, you rise above the spell. Every time you feel the fire of desire and choose to contain it rather than scatter it, you rise in vibration. And that rise is what the distraction was designed to prevent. And here's what most never realize. Distraction is always aiming at your fire. Not because the fire is bad, but because the fire is divine. The energy that surges through you, yes, even when it comes in the form of sexual desire, is not a mistake. It is sacred voltage, and sacred voltage must be honored, must be protected, must be given a channel. If not, it turns against you. But when it is channeled correctly, when it is lifted, refined, transmuted, it becomes focus, vision, clarity, creation. This is what the mystics knew. This is what the prophets carried. They didn't walk without desire. They walked with mastery. Their fire was not smaller than yours. It was simply pointed toward purpose. What once chased them became their weapon. What once confused them became their clarity. That is the power of transmutation. To take the raw, overwhelming current of desire and give it a higher direction. Not to suppress it, not to shame it, but to lift it, to let it burn in the altar of your mission. To transform the storm into stillness. To take the very craving that once broke you and make it the fuel that builds you. And in this space of mastery, you begin to shine differently. Not with effort, but with essence. You no longer live addicted to feedback, to reactions, to validation. Your silence begins to speak. Your presence begins to disrupt. And not everyone will understand it. Some will be drawn to you without knowing why. Others will pull away, unsettled by a frequency that exposes what they've hidden from. But that's not your concern, because clarity never asks for permission. So if you've ever felt the weight of distractions pulling you away from yourself, now is the moment to break the agreement. No more apologizing for your fire. No more scattering your sacred voltage. Take a breath and declare, aloud or in your heart, I protect my focus. Let it become your vow. Let it mark the end of confusion and the return of your clarity. Because here is the third revelation. Your desire is not the enemy. The enemy is the strategy designed to waste it. And once you see this, truly see it, you will no longer walk as someone trying to escape temptation. You will walk as someone who commands fire and carries it with intention. There is a silence that comes after awakening, not peace, not yet, but the deep stillness of realization. When you finally see the world as it is, not as it pretends to be. When the veil lifts, even for a moment, and you recognize just how much illusion you've been breathing in. This is the quiet agony that the awakened soul knows. That awareness doesn't always bring relief. Sometimes it brings burden. Because now you can no longer unsee what you've seen. You can no longer tolerate what once passed as normal. The songs that once entertained you now disturb your spirit. The conversations that once made you laugh now echo with emptiness. The relationships that once felt familiar now feel suffocating. Why? Because your spirit has changed frequencies. You are no longer aligned with what drains you, and that means everything begins to shake. And this is where the real loneliness begins. Not because you are unloved, but because you are now unlike. The people around you may still chase the temporary, still numb their fire with distraction, still mistake craving for love, but you cannot. Your eyes have opened, and once the spirit awakens, it refuses to go back to sleep. You begin to carry a weight that others cannot see. Not because you are cursed, but because you are aware. But do not mistake this weight for punishment. It is sacred. It is the same weight prophets carried, the same ache that awakened mystics held in silence. It is the responsibility of fire, to walk through a world of sleep while staying awake, to carry truth in a world built on illusions, to remain soft in a world that tries to harden you. Yes, the awakened path is heavy, but it is holy. And while the loneliness may feel unbearable at times, it is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your alignment. Because once you fully embrace this awareness, your steps begin to attract a new kind of tribe. Not of noise, but of depth. Not of popularity, but of purpose. And slowly you begin to realize you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out, to be the fire that reminds others that they too are not alone. This is the fifth revelation. Awareness is not an escape from pain, but the invitation into purpose. And though the path may be narrow and steep, it is also anointed. You were not awakened to carry shame. You were awakened to carry light. There comes a point in the journey of the chosen where the body itself begins to speak, not in words, but in signals, tensions, cravings, waves of energy that rise without explanation. And if you're not paying attention, you'll think it's just stress, or hormones, or exhaustion. But those who are awake begin to understand. The body isn't betraying you, it's revealing you. Your body was never meant to be your enemy. It is the temple that houses your fire, the living map of your transformation. And when desire shows up, unexpectedly, uncontrollably, it is not always a call to indulgence. Sometimes it is a sacred alarm, a signal that your energy is rising and asking to be redirected. Because energy that is not expressed creatively will always seek expression physically. But the system we were raised in never taught us this language. It taught us to be ashamed of our impulses, to label our cravings as impure, to fear our own aliveness. And so we learned to suppress, until suppression turned into shame, and shame turned into sickness. Emotional, physical, spiritual. We became disconnected from the very vessel meant to guide us into alignment. But here's what you must understand now. Your body carries divine intelligence. It knows when you're out of alignment. It knows when you're ignoring your calling. And when your soul is suffocating in silence, your body will shout, through temptation, through restlessness, through desires that seem to come out of nowhere. These are not mistakes, they are messages. The moment you begin to see your body as a messenger, not a betrayer, everything changes. Desire is no longer a threat, it becomes a compass. Each time it rises, instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you ask, "What truth have I ignored? What fire have I buried? What part of me is asking to be seen, to be expressed, to be used?" This shift changes everything. You stop reacting and start listening. You stop fighting your body and start honoring it. You stop wasting energy and begin to direct it. And in doing so, you begin to walk in sacred alignment, where every breath, every beat, every surge of desire becomes fuel for purpose. This is the sixth revelation. Your body is not your obstacle, it is your oracle. And when you learn to read its language with reverence, you stop fearing the fire, and you begin to lead it. Here is a kind of silence that heals, a silence that is not emptiness, but fullness, charged with clarity, anchored in awareness. And for those who carry the sacred fire of desire, learning to enter this kind of silence is not optional, it is essential. Because when the world grows loud and the inner cravings grow louder, it is only in silence that truth becomes audible again. Most people run from silence. They fill their days with noise, their nights with distractions, because stillness feels unbearable. But here is the hidden truth. The discomfort you feel in silence is not the silence itself. It is what the silence reveals. It strips away illusions. It exposes false cravings. It reveals where your energy is being scattered, and that's why it feels uncomfortable. Because silence forces you to face what you've been avoiding. But for the chosen one, silence is not punishment. It is a sacred chamber, a sanctuary where the soul remembers its original frequency, and in that remembering, you begin to recover what the world tried to make you forget. Your purity, your fire, your voice, your vision. In sacred silence, desire doesn't disappear, it sharpens. It reveals its truest form. You begin to realize that your craving was never really for flesh. It was for union, not just physical, but spiritual. You were craving God. You were craving purpose. You were longing to be filled, not with momentary pleasure, but with eternal presence. And only silence can make that clear. So if your life has been chaotic, if your spirit feels heavy, if the fire within you burns too wild to control, step into the quiet. Not to run from your desire, but to hear what it's truly asking of you. Not to kill the craving, but to decode it. In that stillness, you will begin to feel your authority return. You will remember that your power is not in reaction, but in command. That your calling is not in performance, but in presence. And that your fire was never meant to be tossed into the winds of the world. It was meant to be held, tended, and directed, like the sacred force it is. This is the seventh revelation. In silence, the chosen one is not diminished. They are refined. And when the world no longer has the power to pull you away from your center, you become untouchable. Not because you are distant, but because you are deeply anchored in who you are. Chosen one. The fire you carry is not a burden. It is a signal. A signal that your life was never ordinary. A signal that your battle is not just yours, it is generational. The intensity you felt, the war within your desires, the shadows that tried to confuse your purity since childhood. None of it has been random. All of it has been orchestrated because you were born to end what others could not. You've inherited a war that didn't begin with you. Look closely, and you'll see it. The silence, the secrets, the suppressed hunger that ran through your family lines, generation after generation. They carried this same fire, but were never taught how to hold it. They were never shown how to lift it, how to honor it, how to transmute it into purpose. And so they fell into patterns they couldn't name, shame they couldn't escape, and cycles they couldn't break. But you are different. You were not just chosen to endure the fire. You were chosen to master it. You are the one heaven entrusted with the responsibility to break what has bound your bloodline. Every time you resist indulgence and choose alignment, you do more than protect yourself. You rewrite your lineage. You become the turning point. You become the one who says, "It ends with me." Understand this deeply. Your craving is not weakness. It is raw potential. Your temptation is not proof of failure. It is evidence of capacity. And the pressure you've felt all your life? That's because the weight of many generations is pressing against your breakthrough. You were chosen to be the door, and doors, feel the pressure right before they open. This is why your battle has always felt heavier than those around you. Why the temptations came early and never stopped. Because what you carry threatens darkness, not just in your life, but across timelines. Your no reverberates in both directions, healing what came before and protecting what comes after. Your decision to rise rewrites the story for your descendants, your spiritual children, your community, your legacy. And maybe after everything, you've felt tired. Maybe you've wondered if the fire will ever leave you alone. But let me say this with clarity: the fire will not leave, because it was placed within you by design. But now it no longer controls you. You command it. You lead it. You walk with it not as a burden, but as a banner. And that changes everything. You were not created to suppress this fire. You were born to become it. And now that you know this, you can finally stop fighting your nature and start directing it, not downward into shame, but upward into power, into clarity, into purpose. The final revelation is this: your battle was never just about survival. It was about restoration. You are not only healing yourself, you are redeeming your lineage. You are fulfilling a prophecy spoken in silence through the generations. And one day, others will look back and realize it was your awakening that set them free. So before you go, make this declaration out loud and in writing. Type it in the comments. I am mastering my desires. I am chosen. Let the universe see your vow. Let the chains hear your decision. Let your ancestors witness the healing they longed for, and let your descendants feel the freedom you've birthed through your fire. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Not because you need more content, but because you deserve a space that reminds you who you truly are. A space where your sensitivity is sacred, where your calling is confirmed, where your fire is no longer feared, but honored. Chosen one, your struggle did not come to destroy you. It came to reveal you. You are not broken. You are not impure. You are fire, and your time is now.